I didn't just ruin my bully's life. I accidentally convinced his hyper-religious, ultra-conservative parents that their perfect son was hiding a scandalous double life and was potentially exposed to a deadly virus. And the craziest part? I did it all over a few pieces of cheap plastic. This isn't a story about physical violence. This is a story about psychological warfare. It is a story about how a seemingly harmless prank snowballed into a nuclear disaster that shattered a family's perfect illusion. I was just a teenager. But I learned very early that if you push a quiet person too far, they won't just hit back. They will dismantle your entire reality. If you crave the dark satisfaction of seeing terrible people get exactly what they deserve, hit that subscribe button right now. We explore the darkest corners of human revenge every single week. Make sure you turn on notifications. You won't want to miss what happens next. Now, let's go back in time. The year was 1994. You need to understand what the world felt like back then. Close your eyes and picture it. There was no high-speed internet. There was no cloud storage. There were no instant digital downloads. The digital world was entirely physical. If you wanted a video game, you had to hold it in your hands. You had to feel the weight of a 3.5-inch floppy disk. It was hard plastic. It had a sliding metal shutter. When you pushed it into the disk drive of a beige, heavy computer tower, it made a loud, satisfying clack. My bedroom smelled like warm plastic and the static electricity of a heavy CRT monitor. The screen glowed with a harsh green light. My best friend and I lived in front of that screen. We were nerds. We were the quiet kids. We were the invisible targets at school. But inside that bedroom, we were gods. Gaming in the 90s was not a cheap hobby. It was a luxury. The local stores in our small town didn't sell the good stuff. If we wanted the latest titles, we had to order them from abroad via airmail. It took weeks of waiting. We would check the mailbox every single day. We saved up our tiny allowances for months just to buy one single game. Titles like Doom 2, The Settlers, and The Secret of Monkey Island. These weren't just games to us. They were our escape. They were our absolute treasures. Because they were so expensive, my friend and I had a sacred pact. We shared everything. We formed a two-person underground syndicate. We learned how to manually copy the copy protection codes. We wrote the game titles on sticky labels with black markers. We protected those discs with our lives. We trusted each other perfectly. Then, the new kid arrived. Let's call him Karma. Karma walked into our classroom like he owned the building. He wore expensive clothes. He smelled like cheap drugstore cologne and arrogant entitlement. He had that smug, punchable smile that told you his parents gave him everything he ever pointed at. But Karma had one thing we desperately wanted. He bragged loudly that his uncle was a computer tech. He claimed his uncle had hundreds of imported PC games. An absolute goldmine. A digital library that we could only dream of. We were naive. We were desperate for new games. So, we made a deal with the devil. We approached him. We offered to trade. The terms were simple. We would give him our pristine, perfectly working original copies. He would take them home, copy them, and return our originals along with copies of his uncle's games. It was a standard 90s playground transaction. The first week, we handed over our absolute favorite game. We waited patiently. A few days later, Karma tossed a blank floppy disk onto my desk. He smirked. I rushed home. I pushed the disk into my computer. Clack. The drive spun. It made a horrible grinding noise. I stared at the heavy glass screen. My heart sank. Data error. Disk corrupted. I thought it was a mistake. We confronted him the next day. He just shrugged. He blamed his floppy drive. He promised to fix it. He asked for another game to copy. And like idiots, we gave him another one. This toxic cycle continued for 2 agonizing months. We handed over our flawless, original games. Every single time, we got pure trash in return. Discs with missing files. Discs infected with basic viruses. Discs with the copy protection completely stripped and broken. Some of our original discs came back physically scratched, covered in sticky fingerprints. We received not a single working game from him. Not one. But he had copied our entire library. He had stolen our months of savings. He had drained us completely dry. When we finally demanded our games back and refused to give him more, the mask slipped. He didn't just ignore us. He laughed in our faces. He knew we couldn't tell the teachers. Trading copied games was strictly forbidden. He had us backed into a corner, and he loved it. But the theft wasn't the worst part. The worst part was his cruelty. Karma wasn't just a scammer. He was a vicious, narrow-minded bully. We wanted to strike his core. We just didn't have a weapon. Until the school handed us a loaded gun. It was a rainy Tuesday. The school forced all the senior classes to attend a mandatory health seminar in the gymnasium. The air smelled like old sweat and floor wax. We sat on the cold wooden bleachers. The seminar was organized by a prominent regional AIDS awareness foundation. A serious-looking woman stood at the front with a microphone. She talked about the virus. She talked about safe sex. She talked about the heavy stigma surrounding homosexuality. Karma sat 2 rows ahead of us, loudly whispering jokes and laughing with his awful friends. At the end of the seminar, the organizers set up a long folding table near the exit. On the table were stacks of glossy informational flyers about HIV, AIDS, and LGBTQ support resources. Right next to the flyers was a massive plastic bowl filled with free condoms. The condoms were wrapped in bright red foil. Right in the center, they had the official, medical logo of the AIDS Foundation stamped in black ink. Most teenagers giggled nervously and walked right past the table. Karma made a loud, disgusting joke and walked out. My best friend and I stopped. We looked at the flyers. We looked at the bright red condoms. Then, we looked at each other. We didn't say a single word. We didn't have to. The connection was instantaneous. We both saw the exact same devastating opportunity. I casually reached out. I grabbed a handful of flyers. I grabbed 5 red condoms. I shoved them deep into my backpack. My heart started beating a little faster. The heist was on. After school, we locked the door to my bedroom. We were not just 2 nerdy kids anymore. We were architects of destruction. We were incredibly lucky. We were among the very few families in our entire town who owned a high-resolution flatbed scanner and an expensive color inkjet printer. This was high-end technology for the time. First, we carefully flattened one of the official AIDS Foundation flyers. We placed it face down on the scanner glass. We scanned the official logo. We imported it into a basic image editing software. We spent an hour meticulously cleaning up the pixels. We made sure the red was the exact, threatening shade of medical crimson. Then, we opened a blank Word document. We pasted the logo perfectly at the top center. It looked completely authentic. It looked like official, sterile, terrifying hospital stationery. Now came the hardest part, the script. We couldn't just write a hateful letter. That would look like a prank. It had to sound professional. It had to sound sympathetic. It had to sound like a genuine medical organization responding to a desperate cry for help. My friend started typing. The keyboard clacked loudly in the quiet room. We debated every single word. We crafted a masterpiece of psychological manipulation. Here's exactly what we wrote. Dear Karma's first name, thank you so much for reaching out to us following the event at your high school. We want to commend your bravery. We understand that it is incredibly difficult being open about your homosexuality, especially in a conservative environment. We know you have many deep questions and concerns regarding your lifestyle and your health. Please find enclosed our official informational flyers, which should answer many of the questions you asked us in your letter. We have also provided a complimentary supply of condoms. Remember, you are not alone. Please practice safe sex at all times. Sincerely, the support team. We printed it. The inkjet printer hummed in Word. The paper slid out slowly. I held it up to the light. It was flawless. We carefully folded the letter. We placed it into a crisp, white envelope. We slid the glossy flyers inside. Finally, we dropped the 3 red condoms into the envelope. They created a thick, undeniable bulge in the paper. Now, the delivery. If we addressed it to Karma, he would just open it, get angry, and throw it away in secret. We needed an audience. We needed the worst audience possible. So, on the front of the envelope, we didn't write his first name. We wrote, strictly confidential. To Mr. Karma's last name. We addressed it to his father. We knew his tyrannical, controlling father checked the mail every afternoon. We knew his father opened everything. We walked to the rusty blue mailbox at the corner of my street. The metal handle was cold. I pulled it open. I dropped the thick envelope into the dark hole. It made a soft thud. There was no taking it back. The missile had been launched. We waited. Wednesday passed. Nothing. Thursday passed. Karma was at school, still acting like a smug king, completely unaware that a ticking time bomb was traveling through the postal system toward his front door. Then came Friday. Karma didn't show up to school. His seat was completely empty. Monday came. Still empty. Tuesday. Empty. My friend and I sat at the back of the classroom, exchanging nervous glances. We were terrified. Had we gone too far? Did he move away? Did his father literally kill him? We started quietly fishing for information. We casually asked his friends where he was. They looked pale. They whispered that something crazy had happened at his house over the weekend. Later, the full story leaked out. And it was more glorious and horrifying than we could have ever imagined. On Saturday morning, his father had walked to the mailbox. He found the official-looking envelope addressed to him. He opened it right in the middle of the living room. Imagine the scene. A deeply conservative, traditional Catholic father pulling out a letter congratulating his son on his bravery for coming out as homosexual. He pulls out flyers about AIDS. And then, 3 condoms drop onto the pristine living room carpet. The house exploded. His mother collapsed into hysterics. She was weeping, screaming, clutching her chest, praying to God to save her son's soul. She was convinced he was living a secret, sinful life and was going to die of a plague. His father turned purple with rage. He tore Karma's room apart, searching for evidence. He screamed so loud the neighbors heard it. Karma, completely blindsided, tried to defend himself. He swore he didn't write to the foundation. He swore he was straight. He swore he didn't know where the condoms came from. But the letter looked so official. The logo was perfect. His parents didn't believe a single word he said. They thought he was lying to cover his tracks. He was grounded immediately. No phone. No television. No going outside. No computer. He was a prisoner in his own bedroom, trapped with parents who looked at him with a mixture of pure disgust and absolute terror. The psychological damage was absolute. His perfect, arrogant world was burned to the ground in a matter of seconds. Eventually, Karma returned to school. He looked like a ghost. The smugness was completely gone. He walked with his head down. He didn't make eye contact. He didn't mock my queen shirts anymore. He wasn't stupid. After the initial shock wore off, he put the pieces together. He remembered the seminar. He remembered we were the only kids who hated him enough to do it, and the only ones with a printer good enough to fake the logo. But he couldn't prove it. At first, he genuinely believed the Foundation had just made a clerical error. But the guilt was eating at us. Or maybe it was pride. We wanted him to know it was us. We wanted him to know exactly why his life was a living hell. We finally cornered him in the locker room. We didn't gloat loudly. We just looked at him, and I quietly whispered, "How are those corrupted floppy disks working out for you?" His eyes went wide. He knew. He ran to the administration. We were pulled out of class. We walked into the principal's office. The air was thick and suffocating. Sitting in the heavy leather chairs were Karma's parents. The mother looked exhausted, her eyes red and puffy. The father glared at us like he wanted to snap our necks. We sat down. The principal demanded the truth. We didn't lie. We didn't cry. We calmly explained the entire story. We explained the theft. We explained the corrupted discs. We explained the months of relentless homophobic bullying. And then, we confessed to creating the letter. The silence in that room was deafening. His parents were stunned. They were furious at us for the fake letter, yes. But suddenly, they realized their perfect, angelic son was actually a thief and a cruel bully. The illusion was broken. We got punished, of course. We were suspended. We had to do weeks of detention. My parents took away my computer keyboard for a month. Was it an extreme overreaction? Yes. Did we cross a massive moral line by using a serious medical crisis to win a petty argument over video games? Absolutely. We weaponized his parents' ignorance. It was a chaotic, reckless, highly illegal move. But let me tell you something. 30 years have passed since that day. I am a grown man now. The world has moved on. Floppy disks belong in museums. But when I lie awake at night, and I think about that arrogant kid handing me a corrupted piece of plastic with a smirk on his face, and then I think about the look of sheer terror in his eyes when his father opened that red condom, I smile. It is the coldest, most satisfying smile you can imagine. I don't regret a single thing. Some say revenge is a poison you drink yourself. But sometimes it tastes incredibly sweet. Now, I want to hear from you. Turn to your keyboard right now. Have you ever pulled off a petty revenge plot in school? Did you ever strike back at a bully in a way that completely spiraled out of control? Drop your darkest, most satisfying revenge stories in the comments below. I read every single one, and I will be selecting the most twisted stories to feature and analyze in our next video. Don't forget to like this video to feed the algorithm, and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Until next time, watch your back, and never steal another person's floppy disks.